The Mississippi never truly sleeps. It breathes, it swells, it withdraws, and in its slow, muddy pulse it remembers everything that has ever stood along its banks. 13 miles from New Orleans, where the air grows thick and cicadas sing like rattles, Destrehan Manor rises above the lower valley, its pale walls lifted carefully from the earth, as if the house itself fears what the river might reclaim. In 1790, when Charles de Laugny first stood upon that land with his young bride, Robin, the river shimmered with promise. Indigo fields stretched wide, the soil rich and obedient. Charles imagined prosperity, lineage, and permanence. He ordered the manor built with intention and caution, its first floor raised high, a silent acknowledgement of the floods that came like uninvited guests. Above it, wide galleries wrapped the second story, shading the rooms from the sun's cruel gaze. Dormers pierced the roof, breathing life into the attic, allowing air to circulate so humidity could not rot the bones of the home. But the land had already been claimed. At night, before the walls were even finished, laborers whispered of footsteps in the grass where no one stood. Lanterns flickered without wind. The river's surface sometimes rippled, as if fingers dragged just beneath it. Charles dismissed such talk, calling it fear born of swamp mist and exhaustion. Yet Robin, pale and quiet, often stared toward the water with a troubled look, her hand resting protectively over her stomach as if she sensed something waiting. As years passed, the manor grew, not only in size but in appetite. Charles altered the structure to gather his expanding family beneath one grand roof, yet still allow privacy. 2 wings extended outward like arms, built for his daughter Celeste and her husband, Jean-Noel Destrehan. Children filled the halls, 14 grandchildren in all, their laughter echoing to the galleries. When the boys reached adolescence, they were moved to the wings, along with servants who watched over them, their footsteps padding softly through the night. But even with voices and life filling the house, there were moments when silence pressed too hard, doors opened on their own, candles burned low far too quickly. Some nights, the river fog crept into the upper galleries, curling around ankles like a lover's grasp. Slaves working the field spoke of shadows standing among the indigo plants, tall and unmoving, watching. No one dared confront them. By the early 1800s, Charles abandoned indigo and turned to sugarcane, a crop that thrived in the heat, fed by sweat and suffering. The fields expanded, so did the number of slaves. Their songs drifted toward the house at dusk, heavy with sorrow, heavy with longing. The manor listened. It learned the sound of grief, and it remembered every name. Eleanor de Laugny married Stephen Henderson when she was barely more than a girl. He was 30 years her senior, his hair already graying, his voice smooth and deliberate. The family approved, wealth often speaking louder than unease. Eleanor smiled dutifully, but the manor knew the difference between joy and obedience. Stephen was different from the others. He walked the galleries late at night, hands clasped behind his back, whispering to himself. He lingered near the slave quarters, listening, watching. Some said he carried guilt like a second skin. Others said he carried ambition sharpened into cruelty. The truth lay somewhere in between. When illness finally claimed him, Stephen wrote a will that shook the family to its core. He intended to free the slaves. Names were written carefully, each one acknowledged, each one granted a future beyond the fields. But death does not always bring peace. The surviving family challenged the will, their voices sharp with fear of loss, of change, of equality. They won. The slaves remained bound. Stephen's final act of mercy was torn apart like paper. The night the ruling was declared, the manor groaned. Walls cracked. A storm rolled in from nowhere, thunder rattling windows, rain hammering the galleries. Eleanor stood at the top of the staircase, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. Witnesses later swore they saw Stephen standing behind her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. But when they looked again, she was alone. In 1838, the property was sold to Charles's granddaughter Louise and her husband John Pierre. The manor passed hands within bloodlines, yet something fundamental had shifted. The air felt heavier. The river crept closer each year. Slaves began refusing to enter certain rooms, especially the upper chambers overlooking the driveway. They spoke of a white figure seated there, watching arrivals, judging departures. Children fell ill. Horses refused to cross specific patches of land. At night, the sound of rocking echoed through empty rooms, though no cradle stood there, and the river whispered names. The Civil War came like a wound splitting the land. Union soldiers marched onto property, their boots pounding into history. The manor was seized, its halls filled with unfamiliar voices, harsh laughter, and the clatter of weapons. Yet for the first time, something like hope stirred within the walls. Freed slaves gathered on the grounds, learning trades, reading, writing, building futures that had long been denied to them. The laughter returned, cautious but real. The manor listened again, unsure what to make of this new sound. But peace was temporary. When the family reclaimed the property after Reconstruction, the weight returned. The lessons taught were slowly forgotten. The manor, once again, swallowed disappointment. Years passed. Generations faded. By 1940, the land was sold to an oil company. Machinery replaced footsteps. Drills tore into the earth, screaming day and night. The river trembled. The manor endured. When the oil company shut down in 1958, abandonment followed like rot. Vandals crept in undercover darkness. Thieves tore the walls, prying for anything of value. They came searching for Lafitte's pirate treasure, convinced gold lay hidden beneath floorboards and behind bricks. They found something else instead. Some ran screaming into the night, claiming hands grabbed them from the dark. Others swore a man with a tricorn hat watched them dig, smiling without warmth. Tools went missing. Lights died. One man was found unconscious at the base of the back staircase, whispering apologies to someone long dead. The manor was left alone again, but it was never empty. When the River Road Historical Society formed in 1970, they believed they were rescuing history, for acres were purchased after long negotiations. Repairs began. Security was installed. The manor slowly returned to dignity, its wounds patched, its scars polished over. By 1973, it stood ready as a museum, welcoming visitors eager to step into the past. That was when the spirits stirred. Workers heard voices calling their names, gentle, curious. They turned, smiling, expecting a colleague, only to find empty halls. Photographs developed later revealed glowing orbs hovering near windows, staircases, beds. They had not been visible at the moment the shutter clicked. Staff felt watched, not with malice, but attention. A white figure appeared regularly in a second-story window, seated in a chair, gazing down the driveway as if awaiting guests who would never arrive. The chair was old, worn smooth by use. No one remembered placing it there. In an upstairs bedroom, a rocking horse began to move. At first, slowly, then violently. It rocked back and forth with such force that its wooden hooves struck the floor, echoing like gunshots. Workers fled the room, hearts pounding, ears ringing with phantom laughter. The horse was removed, but the sound of rocking continued. Echoing from nowhere, a woman appeared on the back staircase, her form translucent, her face unreadable. She never spoke. She only watched. Stephen Henderson and his young bride were seen walking the galleries, hand in hand, replaying moments of regret, of love, of loss. And sometimes a man believed to be John Lafitte himself was glimpsed near the grounds, hat tilted low, eyes sharp, guarding secrets buried too deep to retrieve. The manor had awakened, and it was pleased to be remembered. Tours continued, laughter mixed with unease. Visitors left with stories they couldn't explain. A woman swore her hair was brushed by unseen fingers. A child waved at someone no one else could see. Guides learned to pause when footsteps echoed behind them, even when no one followed. At night, the manor changed. The river's reflection shimmered through windows like candlelight. Shadows gathered in corners, thick and deliberate. The air grew heavy with perfume, with sweat, with iron. Those who lingered too long felt it. The house was not cruel. It was patient. It wanted witnesses. The ghosts were gentle, southern in their manner, but grief lingered beneath their smiles. They whispered stories into dreams, replayed moments of injustice, of love denied, of promises broken. The manor held them all, binding them together. Visitors took photos. Orbs appeared later, clustered around staircases, chairs, beds. The staff displayed these images once tourists returned home, proof that something remained behind, proof that history never truly leaves. Destrehan Manor still stands today. The Mississippi still flows. Staff and tourists continue to report voices, figures, movements that defy explanation. The white figure still sits in her chair. The back staircase still hosts a silent watcher. Stephen and Eleanor still wander, forever bound by love and regret. And the manor listens. It remembers the river. It remembers the fields. It remembers every soul that passed through its doors. Destrehan Manor does not haunt. It waits. And when you step onto its grounds, when you breathe its air and feel the weight settle upon your chest, it welcomes you politely, gently, like a true Southern host. But it never forgets you were there.